Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So you might be wondering what I'm sitting next to. Right here is the Dana 30 out from underneath the Jeep. The reason I have it out here on stands, kind of propped up, is that we're going to be doing some upgrades for this. So I've been sitting on these mods for a little bit just because I've been trying to hone my welding skills a little bit more. So now I finally feel that it's time, and also because I'm getting a little aggressive on the trail. You know, I'm kind of pushing the boundaries of what the Dana 30 in stock form can be, bouncing off rocks, starting to bend the control arm brackets, which is why we went out and got these Artec Industries 1/4 inch control arm brackets, as well as Ballistic Fab Truss. Now, just kind of going from the start, you can most likely do both of these mods, the truss and the control arm brackets, on the Jeep. But for me, since I'm a newer welder, I want to do a better job at welding, make sure I get good penetration and make sure everything's the way it is. I decided to take it out, the axle that is, out from under the Jeep. This way I have a better access to all the brackets I need to cut, and there is some cutting involved, as well as better access for the welder. I can literally spin the axle and get as comfortable as I want. I tend to find that my welds are much better that way. First order of business is we got to cut off this control arm mount. Now, I'm running a 3-link, so I haven't used this since I've installed this axle underneath the Jeep last season. So this is coming off. Clean off. We'll grind this down nice and flat. We'll make room for the truss that goes here. Secondly, we got to go ahead and cut off the factory control arm brackets. Now, for those who haven't really seen underneath it, this is pretty flimsy sheet metal. I mean, if you look real closely, I'm flexing this with my hand. Okay, we're going to be replacing that with some beef. So really, with the control arm mounts, they're only welded on the outside. They're welded here, up here, right underneath the spring perch, as well as on the inside here. This is going to be a little tricky, just because it's so close to the housing. The passenger side is actually much easier to get to. You still have the outer weld here, the upper weld here, and then the axle weld here. Now, most people can get away with doing this with a grinder. In fact, I believe most people choose to do that way. I'm going to go ahead and try using a plasma cutter, just to at least cut the majority of the metal down. Then if I need to, I can come in with a grinder, clean up the bigger stuff that I can't really do well with. Holy crap. That's a huge spider. Look at the size of that sucker. Woo! Ha! he buttoned up. Look at the size of that spider. I'm going to start off with a plasma cutter, do what I can with that, just kind of get a little bit more practice on it. Whatever I can't get, I'm going to go ahead and use a cutting disc, follow it up with a grinder, and then ultimately to a flap disc to get that nice smooth finish. I'm also going to go over, probably with a wire wheel, clean the axle up, trying to make it look a little nicer. Once again, I'm not really about aesthetics. This is not a show rig by any means. This is my trail beater, so I'm going to treat it as such. Not bad. I could definitely clean that up a little bit. The grinder will do. So now I just got one more bracket to go. This is the hard one. Alright, let's see what we did. Alright, I could probably still cut that a little bit more with the plasma. I just might. This is not bad. I just hope I didn't cut into the axle tube too much. If anything, I'll weld a little bit more. I'll grind that flush. That's good. This one, maybe a little bit more with the plasma there. This is all going to be grinder. This is going to be grinder and then flap. So overall, I think we did okay. Oops. I'm going to go ahead and use a grinding disc and grind that down, get it close, and then I'm going to use a flap disc to level it out and smooth everything out. I did go ahead and clean up the axle for the most part. I wire wheeled it. I also used a vinyl stripping brush, which actually seemed to do pretty good. The housing cleaned up pretty well. I mean, this is I think out of a 96, I think. So. The axle tube obviously needs a little bit of help, but the housing looked pretty good. So we're going to go ahead, start grinding. So the truss is test fitted. Little snag that I ran into. Read your instructions, folks. On Ballistic, they want you to cut this off and go with an aftermarket link. I'm not really comfortable with that, so all I'm going to do is probably cut this truss off here, extend it right to the mount, give myself a little bit of clearance. It might be back a little bit further here. And then maybe truss this other side. I don't know. It's probably almost useless because if you look, the housings here. I'm not sure yet. I might make like just a little bridge. Depends on how squirrely I'm feeling. But the beauty part is everything is nice and smooth down. I'm just going to take a really lighter grit flap disc, clean all this up, maybe prep this a little bit, paint it, and then when I'm ready to put the truss on, mark where I'm going to weld, because I'm just going to stitch. I'm not going to weld the whole thing. Mark where I want to weld, clean it up, so that way I have nice covered pipe, no rust. At this time I'm going to go ahead and prep my lower control arm mounts. So what Artec has done is they laser etch where the cam C's go. Now you can opt to not have these and they just have the bolt hole drilled for this, but I opted for the, we'll call it the adjustability. I had these on a previous rig, so I have the cam bolts all ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead, tack the C's in place. I'm going to clamp them down, clean up the metal a little bit, clamp the C's down, tack them in, and then burn them in. So Artec on those lower control arm mounts have a very unique design. So if you look, the contour for the tube is angled, and it's got this little tab that sticks up. So what you do is that little tab rests right against the top or the bottom, the bottom of the spring perch. So it's going to be just like that. And what you do is you top the little pinnacle, the little peak right there, right against there, and then you measure out a quarter inch from here to here. So what I'm going to do is mark that with a marker. Measure it first, but mark it out, clean it up with a flap disc, and get ready to tack it in place. Alright, so I'm going to do another pass on this. Not my worst welds, definitely not my best. I think I can take it up a little bit higher just for a little bit more secure. This got a little porous. I don't know why. I probably should clean the metal a little bit better. So I'm going to let that cool. I'm going to come across the front, and if I can, I'm going to throw a couple tacks or a couple stitches on the inside just to be certain. Fun. Hey y'all. So I've got 3/4 or 2/3 of the axle tube welded to the housing. Came out pretty good, at least this part. The first or where I met the two beads, not so much. But I still have to heat this up and finish it out. I probably got about a 1.5 to 2 inch section. While that was going on, or cooling down, I went ahead, modified the truss. So this truss goes all the way across, comes down here, and then welds to the other side of the housing. But it is also required to remove this cast piece, or this cast mount, which I'm not really comfortable with. I think this is probably the strongest, best mount you can keep. Since I got the 3-link, I'm going to go ahead and keep this and modify the truss around it. I'd rather have the truss give before this, obviously. Although this isn't the most structurally sound. I mean, this looks like 1/8 inch plate on either side, and then it's capped with a 1/4 inch topper. So I got to find a way to make it work. That's kind of where I'm at right now. Okay, so next morning I let the axle tubes cool overnight, at least this side, because I only have one blanket. And it looks like we won. Looks like we did alright. That could have been a little bit better. Alright. Okay, so after a lot of cutting, finally getting the truss to fit up a little bit more. I got to trim more here. I'm tacking in this 1/4 inch plate that goes on top that ties everything together. This is supposed to be where you weld in the aftermarket control arm mount, the upper control arm mount. I'm not doing that. I'm just using this as a topper. I'm going to tack it into the housing here and stop it right here. So I'm just going to tack the 1/4 inch in a couple places just to hold it together, and then I use that as a place to signify where I'm going to trim the back side of the truss. Now, this truss took an awful lot of trimming just to get it to fit right. I might even have to do a little bit more there. In fact, actually, I'm not totally thrilled with how that's sitting now. Maybe I'll redo it again. Okay, so the back plate is a little bit more cleaned up. I'm going to go ahead and tack this in place so I can bench weld it. Okay, so everything is welded up, everything's dry, everything's cool. Now I just did a quick paint job just to get us through, so let's install this thing. So all in all, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't the worst thing in the world. I really just ended up painting the axle with undercoating. It seemed to work okay. Held up. I already took it out on I think 2 trips, and it's held up pretty well. You might have noticed that my diff cover was off. That's going to be covered in another video. I had a slight problem with my locker. If you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, you kind of know what happened. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, go ahead and check out my links below to my social media. I hope you enjoyed that. It wasn't necessarily a how-to, but more of a build vlog. Now, I'm going to be doing more of these in the near future because the Jeep is going to be taking on some new characteristics. I'm not going to get into details yet as I don't have everything concrete, but I'm hoping to have some big changes coming down the pipeline for the Jeep and the channel. So stay tuned for those. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.